When did birthday parties become this massive thing?
When my daughter Hazel asked for an Alice in Wonderland themed birthday party, I did as any Pinterest mom would do and went a little overboard.
I have 3 kids, and so that means I'm spending $700 3 times a year on just birthday parties for their friends. The amount of money that we spent for like the experience that we had, the toll it took on our family for a couple days, like we cannot do this again.
This morning I asked my kids what they wanted for breakfast, and one said croissants and the other said cereal, so I thought we would compromise and make croissant cereal.
What do you do when your kids get bored? If you're in the US, you likely don't like that your kids are getting bored.
My nephew just lost his first tooth, so let's make him a little box of goodies from the Tooth Fairy. The Pokemon coloring book, toxic waste, more of this toxic waste crap, water balloons, sucker, and a little bit of Play-Doh. First tooth box.
If any kids come to the party, I'm not gonna give you a party favor. Like you're two.
Is this fun for anybody? Like, why are we doing this?
Becoming a parent in the modern day comes with the harsh reality of the standard for today's childhood. From over-the-top birthday parties to weekly sensory crafts, a child's joy is now premeditated in the effort to manufacture memories. Children that used to run wild and live free are now overscheduled and over-entertained because of this idea that we can buy our children a magical childhood. But this raises the question of whether parents are getting too involved in their children's lives, and if this planned magic could be harming both the parents and the children. So let's dive into it, where these new expectations came from, the effects they're having on parents and children, and what we need to do to preserve magic without overindulging. Of all the childhood activities that have gotten a glow up, birthday parties by far have outshone all of them. They've become huge events with grandiose themes, balloon arches, bouncy castles, petting zoos, and often hired actors. And with that, it's not uncommon for parents to be spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on these birthday parties.
Go back to the simpler days, go to Party City, pick up your themed party supplies, get Mickey Mouse plates, napkins, cups, that's all you need. Parents, caregivers, moms, whoever you are, you stand with me? Do we need to sign a petition? Do we need a form to fill out? Do we have to write a letter to somebody? I don't know what we got to do. Start a movement? Let's just stop with the crazy birthday parties. It's too much.
If this was an isolated event, just one huge event every year, that's one thing, but the grandiose nature of childhood has seeped into so many other parts of even their everyday lives. It feels like if you're not constantly pursuing the most for your child, then you're not a good parent. We feel this pressure to be constantly coming up with new fun crafts for the kids that often involve sensory bins for our babies. We have Elf on the Shelf, where every day of December, this little elf needs to be in a new fun position to keep the magic going for Christmas. And at the end of the month, don't you dare share any Christmas photos on Instagram unless the whole family is wearing matching Christmas pajamas. And then we also have the Tooth Fairy, who now gives toys instead of a coin for losing a tooth. This was my first Valentine's Day where Brooke was in school and we gave out cards, and all of a sudden I learned that you don't just give cards anymore. It has to be cards and a toy, cards and a chocolate. One mom even apologized because she said she didn't have time to go get something more than just cards. As you probably know, this is not how childhood used to be, or at least for my generation and older. Most of us grew up with our parents obviously involved in our lives, but not so integrated as they currently are. And parents definitely weren't as vital to our day-to-day entertainment. We didn't do crafts unless it was a special occasion, or of course in school. Christmas was only really celebrated the week of Christmas, not the whole month. All the birthday parties you went to had the same theme of birthday party with your rainbow balloons and rainbow streamers, and of course a homemade cake. It was just regular childhood. It's crazy how in one generation's time, it seems like the formula for childhood has been completely rewritten, and there's a new expectation for what it means to provide for your children. This portion of today's video is sponsored by Blueland. Did you know that according to a World Wildlife Fund study, we consume the equivalent of 1 credit card's worth of plastic every single week? This plastic comes in the form of microplastics that shed off of everyday objects. Things like the film around your dishwasher pods is actually plastic, and that plastic doesn't just disappear in the wash, it contaminates the water that's cleaning the dishes that you're eating off of. And that's why I'm so excited to have switched over to Blueland. Blueland makes cleaning products that are both people and planet friendly because there is no plastic plastic waste. Everything you get from Blueland uses no single-use plastic in any component, from its bottles, tablets, wrappers, and shipping. As well, the products are free of phosphates, chlorine, bleach, parabens, VOCs, ammonia, triclosan, and phthalates. Now, I am a chronic bad dishwasher loader. If you ask Josh, he'll tell you I rarely rinse my dishes. I just throw them in there. I don't really think about it. And the Blueland tablets still are able to clean my dishes really well, get rid of all the tough grease and the burnt stains, because I'm also really bad at burning my food on the pans. So I'm just very grateful to have something that can really clean the dishes that I put through a lot. I've also really been enjoying the laundry tablets, how easy it is to just take a tablet, throw it in the drum of your washer, and you're good to go. And I can confirm that they do a good job of cleaning your clothes, even if you have young kids like me who get all the stains, all the messes on their clothes. We're potty training right now, so don't even ask about how dirty our clothes are right now. These can handle it. Overall, Blueland gives me the ability to tackle all those tough messes that come with parenthood, while also giving me the peace of mind that I'm not contaminating the home that I'm trying to clean. And one of the best parts of Blueland is how affordable it is. There's a stigma around health products being expensive, but with the Blueland subscription, you can get both the dishwasher tablets and the laundry tablets at only 32 cents a load. So if you want to try out Blueland, make sure you check the link in the description or check out the QR code on the screen here, and that will get you 15% off your first kit. Thank you so much to Blueland for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get back to magical childhoods. Now, how exactly did we find ourselves here? The biggest factor, of course, is social media. Pinterest in particular, I think, started this all, if not the mommy bloggers, because they are the OGs. And while Pinterest isn't the biggest or the most influential platform right now, it was one of the first to build this idyllic version of childhood. On Pinterest, you have all these crafts you can do with your kids. You see perfect nurseries and toddler rooms, cute stylized snack ideas, adorable mommy-baby matching outfits, 1,000 inside activities for winter, 1,000,000 summer bucket list ideas, and of course, 1,000,000,000 birthday party themes. While Pinterest has been an amazing resource for us parents, it has also led to this increase in expectations on parenthood and childhood. The current expectation for mothers is that in any and every event, you scour Pinterest for the best ideas, execute them flawlessly, and take photos to share to all your friends online. This, combined with the same influence we're seeing on Instagram and TikTok, means that we're always seeing everyone's best in parenthood. And that, of course, makes us question whether we're doing enough for our children. We know that social media is a highlight reel, but that doesn't take away the pressure that we feel from seeing everyone execute their parental strengths and then compiling all that into a new standard that everything we do for our kids should be at the highest tier. The inspiration that we get from social media, I get it, it's super helpful. I'm using it all the time too for my kids, but it's not normal to be seeing all the parents going all out for their children. And the thing you might not think about is that usually it's not that the influencers are doing all the things. They're normally picking the one thing that they're really good at and showing that. Like, one person loves baking, so they share the baked goods they made for their kids. One person loves doing crafts, so that's what they share. One person loves sewing, so they share the clothes they make for their kids. And instead of leaning on our own strengths as parents, we stack all these things that we see on social media into this huge pile of things we need to do for our children, otherwise we're not measuring up. The other problem that has led to this overdone version of childhood is that the fear of our children missing out has led us to this kind of keeping up with the Joneses version of motherhood, and also a one-upping mom culture. Only seeing beautiful things on social media is impactful, but solely isn't enough to reform society's childhood traditions. While these posts are picturesque, I don't think it's enough for every mom to feel they need to perform the same for their children. I think the real kicker here is from seeing the parents of our children's friends doing the Pinterest activities and the Pinterest crafts. That's when we get scared that if we're not doing the same, our child could feel left out or less than.
The worst mom shamers are other mothers. As women, even before we become mothers, we are pitted against each other. There is no perfect mother, there is no perfect roadmap, and there are no perfect kids. Instead of coming into community and realizing that we share so much of the similar life experience of motherhood, we sit around and judge each other. It's truly the saddest thing about motherhood. Where we could have a sisterhood, we have a witch hunt.
We as adults have the ability to see our value despite the things we have or the things we do, but children are still sensitive to this stuff. One mom shares her experience and says, "It seems like almost every status update in my Facebook feed highlights a Disney vacation or some huge birthday bash. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy seeing photos of these awesome events, but at the same time, I try to shield my kids from it. I don't want them asking, when are we going to Disney World? Where are we having my birthday party?" I definitely feel this pressure too. When I was one of the only parents that only had a card for Valentine's Day, no chocolates, no toys, I felt a bit of embarrassment. As stupid as that sounds, you just don't want your kid to stand out for not doing the same as everyone else. And I can also see how doing more than the status quo can make people feel like better parents. But while everyone just wants what's best for their kid, this is what's leading to the one-upping mom culture. Or I guess I should call it parent culture. Is it just moms? I don't know. But the idea is if a small party is good, then a big party must be better. But this just leads to a never-ending cycle of matching each other's one-upping, which leads to higher and higher expectations. All of this extreme magic making, of course, does take a toll on mothers. In this Keeping Up with the Joneses version of motherhood, we are unintentionally subscribing to a never good enough narrative that leaves us in perpetual mom guilt.
In other cultures, they just don't do as much kid-focused activities, like constantly feeling they need to entertain their children. Another thing they don't do is tie mom guilt to everything. Like, we tie mom guilt to anything that has to do with our child. We virtually never look at like what makes sense for the mom, what makes sense for the family. We always say, I could do more, I could do more. So we do all of this stuff like trampoline places, play dates every day, trying to entertain our kids so they feel the love, so they're not bored. And then anything we can feel guilty about, we do.
One mom shares her experience with these over-the-top birthday parties and how it affects her. The lavish, heavily Instagrammed parties warp the minds of parents and set unreal hopes for parties that are supposed to be casual, cute, and family-focused. And because so many of us don't have the time, money, or energy to create such a perfectly decorated fanfare, we're often left feeling defeated, and we are unintentionally sabotaging a lot of the parents around us, the ones who can't afford these lavish affairs, whose schedules don't allow for the crafting and prep work, or whose mental load is already at capacity.
Where are the other moms planning a toddler's birthday? I'm talking a literal 2-year-old. And you're gonna make it nice, and you're gonna make it cute, you're gonna have a little theme. Ours is puppies this year, let's potty. But you're not gonna spend their future college fund on the party. They're not getting a massive balloon arch or one of those giant ass signs with their name in the yard. I'm sorry, but if any kids come to the party, I'm not gonna give you a party favor. Like you're two. And like I said, birthday parties are only one aspect of these childhood expectations. More and more we're seeing everyday moments are supposed to be special, not just the odd occasion. I think especially with the trad wife movement taking over motherhood social media, we're feeling this pressure to make even boring tasks more magical, like making breakfast, folding laundry, playing with the kids in the backyard. Another mom shares her experience and says, "We're being bombarded with these images of idealized motherhood that are selective, cropped, and photoshopped, leaving us to think that we're the only ones whose homes are messy and lives feel like a crap show. Our sense of what's real and achievable has been distorted. All of this and more is now required of us in order to be considered good moms. Not that we'll ever be rewarded or compensated for achieving this elusive state. There will always be more on the to-do list, more recent findings in childhood development, more environmental and social injustices to navigate that will keep us striving but never arriving." The other problem with all this pressure to make childhood magical is that it leaves no time left to make our own lives magical. In this, we're modeling to our kids that they are the center of the universe, a mother's needs don't matter, and a mother is only meant to survive and struggle. I have a lot of moms sharing their experiences in this video if you haven't noticed, so here's another one. By comparing myself to other moms and having unrealistic goals and ideals, the motherhood fails just keep piling up while the wins were squashed down out of sight. The fails far outshone anything good that I was doing as a mom, yet no one was actually telling me I was failing or making me feel bad. It was all me. I was my own worst critic, and an utterly unfair one at that.
just like you are. All this pressure to be the provider of fun leads to another form of guilt surrounding one-on-one playtime. I hear a lot of moms saying that they feel bad for not loving playing on the floor with their children as if it's supposed to be fun. I'm not saying that it's never fun, like you can still have a good time playing with your kids, but there's a reason why adults don't play like children play. It's because we don't like those things.
What is wrong with me as a mom that I don't want to play with my kids? Turns out, there's something in your brain called dopamine, like a happy hormone, and we all get little bursts of it by doing different things. Your children don't get dopamine released when they play with their mom. Your children's dopamine gets released when they play with their dad. Dad and kids, dopamine gets released when they play with each other. When your children's dopamine gets released when they're with you, snuggling, resting, watching a movie, and touching each other. That is when your children's dopamine gets released with mom.
While it's great to play with your kids, and you definitely should, it's good for their development, it's unhealthy for both you and the child if you're taking on the role of the sole entertainer. And this leads into our next topic, which is the effects that this has on the children. First off, with all this parental control of fun, kids are missing out on boredom. Kids need boredom to learn how to play, but also for their own self-discovery, like learning what their interests are and also learning how to play with other kids. So much of childhood now seems just filled up with screen time and scheduled activities. But this means there's no time for the free play that they need.
What do you do when your kids get bored? If you're in the US, you likely don't like that your kids are getting bored.
If you have a toddler at home that you need to keep occupied, you need to try this. Put a bunch of their toys in a bowl, put water in it, freeze the bowl. When it's frozen solid and you need something for your toddler to do, pull it out and set it up. This came in perfect timing today for when my child said he was bored.
Dr. Westgate said, if parents don't allow for free imaginative play, children may never discover their innate love of nature, sports, or art, or even the pleasure they can find in simply relaxing or playing. Being able to identify and develop those sources of meaning is a really critical skill to have lifelong. Parents often feel the pressure to get down on the floor and play with young children every time the children are feeling bored, but that can keep children from learning how capable they are of stepping into their imaginations. Because of this, there's no time for free play.
You unlock the secret to calm kids when you allow them to sit in boredom or to self-play, because they're no longer relying on a prop or a TV or an iPad or you. They know that they can do it themselves. They also know it's okay to just be bored. To give you an example, I recently went to the post office with both my kids for a passport, and we had to wait 2 hours. And I was just telling my friend this, and she was like, oh, did you have an iPad? Like, what did you do? How did you entertain them? And I was like, no, I didn't have an iPad. Like, we stood, we sat, we talked, we waited, and we got it done. It was no big deal. When you get kids used to this, there's nothing you can't do as a family, and they no longer need an iPad or a TV. And it's truly just a practice. You have to keep practicing this, and you'll be able to build up these extended periods of time where your kids get super creative, have tons of fun, and you're able to enjoy life more.
On top of that, in a world where we are the sole entertainer for our children, kids are getting less and less time with other kids. Something you may not think is a problem because children go to school where they're shoulder to shoulder with other kids for 8 hours a day, but the key here is that they're missing out on unstructured and unmonitored playtime with other kids. This time is very valuable for children's development as it, again, helps to grow independence and learn social skills. In the absence of an adult to explain the rules and intervene when others don't play fair, kids learn to negotiate and sort out their own problems. They learn how to cooperate, express their opinions effectively, and accommodate other people's interests. These are important skills to take into the adult world. Another consequence of prioritizing magic in our children is that they lose the ability to find beauty in the mundane. When you look back on your own childhood, I'm sure you can think of very fond memories of very unexciting moments in life. If we only ever make life a grand production, our children become spectators of life, and their desire for more entertainment only grows. We are unintentionally teaching our children that life is only fun or beautiful when it's premeditated and perfectly packaged, and that the beauty is not something you can discover on your own. On one hand, we can't blame parents for just wanting to make these beautiful traditions and moments for their kids. We as adults also want to feel the magic too through our children because Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy aren't fun for us anymore. But if we go too far and make every moment magical, then children lose the ability to find joy in the simple moments. Mothers being the sole source of magic in childhood also isn't how the parent-child dynamic has always worked. Mothers playing with their children is a new concept of the modern world, as the traditional mother took on the role of the caretaker and the educator, but not necessarily the friend. It's interesting in the conversation of it takes a village to raise a child that it's usually interpreted incorrectly. Judith Harris, in discussion of this, said that the popular phrase "it takes a village to raise a child" is true if interpreted differently from the usual Western interpretation. The reason it takes a village is not because it requires a quorum of adults to nudge erring youngsters back onto the path of righteousness. It takes a village because in the village there was always enough kids to form a playgroup. If you find yourself in a group with a lot of adults and a lot of children, you will see this happen. Children group together and play with each other because children are most fun to children most of the time. And this is what actually provides the relief for parents rather than passing the children off to all the babysitters. As long as there's one older child or the children are in an age-appropriate, safe environment, then everybody wins. The parents get a break and the children get that valuable time with their peers. And while this village dynamic was the family structure prior to the 20th century, even as early as the 1900s, parents were told to be hands-off with their children's amusement. In 1928, John Watson wrote Psychological Care of Infant and Child, which encouraged moms to stay away from children's play altogether because they'd ruin it. Watson wrote, "The child is alone putting his blocks together, doing something with his hands, learning how to control his environment. The mother comes in, construction play ceases. The child crawls its way or runs to the mother, takes a hold of her, climbs into her lap, puts his arms around her neck. Blocks and the rest of the world have lost their pulling power." Watson even says if you're having a hard time avoiding parental interference, to put the child out in the backyard a large part of the day. Build a fence around the yard so that you are sure no harm can come to it. When the child can crawl, give it a sand pile and be sure to dig some small holes in the yard so it can crawl in and out of them. Let it learn to overcome difficulties almost from the moment of birth. If your heart is too tender and you must watch the child, make yourself a peephole so that you can see it without being seen, or use a periscope. Now, we can all agree that that's extreme. And I'm not advocating for this style of parenting. I'm also not here to say that parents of the 1920s had the best techniques. We all know that they had their own issues with parenthood. I just share this to give the larger perspective that the overbearing version of parenthood that we're currently using is not the only way that people have ever parented, and as we've discussed earlier, is not the best way. One of the most important points of all this is that despite all the efforts that parents put into making childhood magical, we forget that childhood is inherently magical. While parental neglect can obviously damage childhood, parents don't need to go out of their way to make every moment magical just to make childhood special.
I have this memory from my childhood of just sitting in the dirt in my mom's garden. She had this huge sprawling garden where she grew all kinds of different vegetables, and the sky was this bright tangerine orange, and I was just sitting there eating strawberries off the bush, and I just had this feeling of contentment, and I think that's a feeling I'm trying to recapture.
Planning elaborate events, daily crafts, quarterly vacations can, of course, bring some joy to your child, but not any more than a simple life. Childhood isn't perfect, and it's not supposed to be, because the beauty in childhood is that any day could be magical. Think about how a child views the world in their own eyes. Remember the first fall of snow on cold winters, and building snow forts until your gloves and boots were soaked through, long drives on rainy days where you would create stories in your head that aligned with the landscape you were driving through, racing leaves in the creek at the park and trying to build stick dams that would redirect the water's path, even getting lost in the narrative you've created with the dolls on your living room floor. None of these took the extra effort from your parents to make the day special, but they were special because childhood is special. We are so pressured to do so much for our children, when in actuality, all that effort could have little to no effect on increasing a child's magic.
I asked you about magical things from your childhood, and so many of the things were like family tradition things. On weekends we would have family movie nights, and my mom would make a homemade pizza, creating a cozy pallet on the floor with blankets and pillows. Fridays at 5 o'clock, the local radio station would play It's Finally Friday by George Jones, and my mom and I would sing it to the top of our lungs. It was so fun. I love that song. So simple, but my parents took me grocery shopping on Fridays with them. We'd go out to eat together and then do the shopping. It subconsciously taught me so much, and it was our thing, which I love.
So So what does this mean for us parents? Should we just cut out the magic altogether and stop spending time with our kids? Obviously not. Like I said, we just shouldn't be the sole source of entertainment for our kids. It's really important to spend time with your kids. I don't want you to get me wrong. It's really fun to do things for our kids. Makes them feel special. It makes us feel special. But all your children want from you is a relationship, even if that just means bringing them into your day-to-day. As for all the themed crafts and over-the-top birthday parties and everything else I've said, I don't think it's inherently bad. I get that for some moms, this is something that they love to do and makes them happy, so who am I to tell them to stop? But on the other hand, some moms don't want to be doing the extravagant stuff, but just go along with it. And that's when I think we need to stop ourselves and think, do we really need to be doing this for our children? Do they really need that extra knick-knacky toy just for a moment of fun that's going to be thrown out in a week anyway? Or would they be better off without? But I don't know what the solution is for the keeping up with the Joneses issue in motherhood. Like I said, I don't want to crush the spirits of the moms who love doing these things. They love the Pinterest crafts. They love the big events. My sister loves throwing parties. She loves the balloon arches and all the stuff. But we really need this to be the expectation, not the standard. And maybe the only way to stop it from being the expectation is for all the moms who don't want to do it to stop doing it. Hold your ground, stay strong, and most of the time people aren't judging you for it either way. You know, I'm not a super crafty mom, so I'm definitely not going to be doing all the handmade Valentine's cards next year, and hopefully that'll make other moms feel more comfortable to just do the cards too. I do think it always comes back to this, we should probably get off our phones a bit more. I'm just as guilty of this, but the less we're seeing online of all these perfect parents, the less we're going to be influenced in our real lives. Because if we're only ever exposed to a mother's best moments on social media, we'll never escape the mom guilt that comes from not measuring up to this unrealistic standard. Finally, if you're feeling guilty because you think you're not measuring up as a mom, just remember that childhood without Pinterest is still magical.